work. That is really, really cool. That's really
So
cool.
I've been told.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I have done some reading. I've read some books. I've tried writing, and I found that just working through the canon, if you will, of Ellipsis' work has been really interesting in terms of learning more about patience in storytelling and um, long plots. Oh my God, what an arc for some of those characters! And
It's really cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's nice to see the whole. I think the premise is like a D&D adventure, but from the eyes of the low level monsters getting crushed by the adventurers. So it's pretty cool. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's really cool.
Okay,
their
that's
extras
Look at
probably
the
don't last very
look at the
long.
little goblin.
he's so happy.
yeah. The funny thing is the other 5 people here are basically avatars that kill a lot of goblins.
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
I'm trying to take
I'll,
it personally.
I'll have you know, this avatar has never killed a single goblin.
Okay.
Nice.
You
Alright.
started at bandits then?
Yeah, a little bit.
Gotcha.
What if the bandits were goblins?
Well,
And orcs.
Hmm.
That was the first.
I mean, good work. So, just to kind of lay things out, we do definitely want to do a table talk of a lot of topics. Pretty broad. I wanted to kind of focus in on some of the interesting ways, for example, libraries and some of the stuff we're doing to kind of let Jay know what's going on. Why are you laughing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Okay, this is suspicious.
He didn't see that?
He did not.
I
What?
did.
So, so just to kind of start things off, well, one of the things I did want to talk about is um, the fact that one of the main things that has helped kind of the community that we've started here with ATH is the fact that we started like the D&D group here at the library. I know it's like I let Jay know that I play D&D, and he was like, "Dude, let's do a group," and it's been super supportive of it since. Um, and it's actually given me a unique perspective of being able to actually play in person. But I've also then expanded when I met all you knuckleheads to play online as well. So Core, I know you play in person.
I do actually.
So, can you tell us like how long you've been playing in person and a little bit about that?
Oh, let me think. When was the last instance of that festival? I think 7, 8 years.
Ooh.
Yeah, but the thing is, of course it started as a one shot, as most of those things do, and it was with a crew I was basically doing the beverage stand at a festival,
Hmm.
and we've been running that for I think 5, 6 years, little indie festival, and then that basically had its last instance because all the crew got kids and couldn't do the festival anymore. Basically, it was a friend group thing more or less. So that
Rip.
ended. But then we were like, hey, we kind of still want to keep meeting up, and then we had been talking about tabletop during our breaks and on the festival. So I was like, hey, I can throw you guys a one shot, and then we did a one shot, and that became a 7-year campaign, I guess.
One shot.
I mean, the thing is, we only get around playing once a month because 2 of them work in customs and work shifts.
I see.
So yeah, we only get like 1 game a month. So on the scale of a weekly game, we're at like 2, 3 years. But we have alternating DMs and alternating systems. I DM D&D, another guy in the group DMs Shadowrun, and maybe soon a third person is gonna DM Deadlands.
Ooh.
Jordan like that, Jay. That's what Jordan's always talking about. Is
Uh,
is it Deadlands? It's Savage Worlds, right?
Yeah, Savage Worlds version. Because
Yeah,
the thing
yeah.
is that recently got kickstarted into a localized German release.
Oh, okay.
And so he picked it up, like a really nice like Marshall edition with the poker chips and cards and everything. like actual hardware. So he was like, I'm gonna
Oh,
grab
wow.
that and I'm gonna DM that.
Yeah, it has a really cool Wild West flavor. So coming with the actual accessories are really nice. I like that.
I mean, the funny thing about that is that the poker chips and like poker cards are actually gameplay elements.
Yeah, yeah,
Huh.
because
Yeah,
the cards is the
basically
cards are initiative.
you
Okay.
draw a 5-hand draw poker hand, and depending on your score, your spell gets better or worse if you're a spellcaster.
Oh, I like that. That's
Yeah.
clever.
And then Savage
Sweet.
Worlds does cards for initiative, and the poker chips are bennies for like they're like kind of like hero points.
Yeah.
Ah.
Way to shrug off and do heroic things, which is kind of cool. So yeah, it's interesting you guys met at a festival. That's something that I know, Jay, we've been talking about doing more outreach, being able to do stuff, not just tabletop, but like helping people with computers, doing tables at festivals. I know I've done a couple, and kind of pushing for that. So seeing that groups kind of form through that, that's definitely a really nice thing to see.
I recently discovered a library outreach thing that was pretty cool. I think Artsy was there too, right?
With what?
When we were touring Munich, the pop-up library,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
it basically was a little like trailer with 2 bookshelves in it, and they just plopped down beanbags and like
Yeah, a
these
lot of
foldable beach
beanbags.
chairs
Hammocks.
and hammocks, and just threw that down basically on the town square, and we're like, hey, pop-up library.
Yeah, it looked really cool.
And
Well, a lot of
Didn't you
people
take a picture?
actually.
I might have to see if I can find that. Somebody for sure did.
It looked really successful too. There were a ton of people around it.
I mean, it was a
Huh.
beautiful day in a like I think 4 million people city, so of course there were a lot of people.
Yeah, even then.
Let me actually check if I still have that on my camera roll.
So, Jay, I will put you on the spot here.
All right.
So I know you've mentioned doing a lot of outreach and stuff for the library, some pop-ups. Care to kind of discuss some of the ideas that we've had or that we've spoke about over the past few years, and kind of some of your goals and or like what you want to accomplish with not even just our department in general, but the library system. Would you like to kind of
Yeah,
elaborate?
absolutely. I'd love to weigh in on that one. One of the problems that I think we face in libraries is that it tends to be a very um, static environment, which will hardly surprise anybody. But uh, as technology progresses and social media becomes more dominant in the culture, it's less and less important for people to connect at the library. It's less and less a place people want to go to because they can create environments, which, of course, you're all familiar with that, given the medium we're talking about today. And as exciting as all that is, we still need to find a way to pull people into connection with the library. I am involved in the field, so I kind of have a thing where I'd like to see them survive. Uh, Library as a place, as a meeting place, is something that I think that we can really work with, and the only way to do that is to give the reading public, possibly, but just people that are in the community, give the community a reason to want to come to the library. Uh, One of the things I thought was brilliant with Pedro's approach is creating a learning environment and an inclusive environment so that his approach to the games are not just the games, they're thought experiments. And that, of course, is going to make things more interesting for everyone involved. And I do see the image in the back of that pop up library. That looked pretty cool. Other things that have been mentioned so far today, the idea of the pop-up library, kind of version of the outreach we're trying to work with. We have an extension department that has access to, or will soon, we hope, have access to a vehicle. And that lets them go to community points that aren't libraries, whether those are going to be large apartment complexes. I love the idea of just plopping down in a busy park and just firing up a one-shot game. That sounds like a brilliant plan, and I think Pedro's probably ought to try and steal that one because that
Mm,
sounds really awesome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Especially
Yeah.
like during a festival that there's all these festivals that happen, like Lilac
Yeah.
Festival. We have something called that because we have lilacs out here, or Puerto Rican festival, or whatever festival we have out here, and just like plop down and start just running a game. I think just people will walk and see, and once like the dice start rolling, people start cheering, people start getting into it. I think it would draw like that attention because people are always naturally like, "What's going on there? Why are they having so much fun?"
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
especially festivals kind of have a bit of downtime, and people are very open to trying and experiencing stuff there. So that's a good point to do that.
So we're definitely marking that idea down as something that we can look into. So because it's one thing to go to like a con where everyone's just running tables, and that's everyone's expected, and there's so much competition, there's so much people are bouncing from one game to another, but they kind of like get the permission to do it in a place that not expected, and it's just kind of there. Might be really cool every once in a while. So
I think if we make something like that happen, that would be somewhat original in this area, at least.
oh yeah.
And I think the larger concern that I have is just trying to get more people connected with, I don't want to say safe environments exactly, but give people an opportunity to connect. I think, as I'm sure you know, I played a little D&D in college as well, and the sense of connection that you get is really can be like a haven in when
Yeah,
your life is filled with chaos and uh,
yeah, absolutely.
frustrations, and you can express yourself in an entirely different way. And I think that you know I don't want to be that do-gooder guy, but why can't we stretch ourselves and put the library in a space where we are a place people can go for? I hate to say sanctuary, but come on, yeah, people need that. Everybody needs. I need that. All of everybody at this round table needs that on occasion. And I'd
Right.
like to see the library be a place where more of that can be not just available but expected, and to see how much we can make this gaming environment, I don't want to say therapeutic, but healthful, you know?
So I'm currently working as a Scrum Master and Agile coach, so I have to be very considerate and nice and welcoming at work, which can be taxing at times. So playing a very angry dwarven woman every Tuesday is amazing.
He's venting in game.
I would
Yep.
never. Yes, I do.
Yeah, and if we had Solzy here, like the presentation we had during the conference where Solzy was talking about how it helped her with her identity. Um, super super important because it's a safe space. So to have a safe space within a safe space, that's just a really nice environment. So yeah, absolutely.
I think also the part where this is just about can be, it doesn't have to, but about self-exploration. We have multi-dimensional people. As you highlight at work, you can't be that guy. You can't even let yourself think you're that person that can do, you know,
Mhm.
that can behave in a way that's completely unhelpful. Uh, and I think that you're absolutely right. I love the idea that these environments allow you to express a part of yourself that you can't otherwise.
Does anyone here want to give a specific example of how maybe they've used their characters to express a part of themselves in a way that kind of helped you through something, or just
Yeah,
something that you want to do? Archie?
yeah. I actually discussed that with my therapist,
Nice.
and she thought it was like a good escape from reality and a good way to cope with certain things and um, I'm looking for the word events that happened, I guess,
Hmm.
and how you can respond differently and basically be in control of all of that. But mostly for me, it's escaping reality and just be something else, somewhere else.
Mm.
Nice. Would anyone else like to add on that?
The being and yeah, the being somewhere else and someone else is definitely a big part of it for me. I do put like a part of me in all of my characters, usually a different one, so that makes it easier to play. That's something you are familiar
Yeah.
with. But it's interesting for me to also put in like certain traits or things that I would like to be things that I can do or be, and then kind of get used to that. Use it as a bit of a personal development learning thing.
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
the same actually. Every character has a piece of me.
Yeah, like right now on the library game, I'm playing someone who is very confident. I am not very confident usually. I can fake it for a long time, but that's not the same. So, see where this goes.
And like Core said, playing an angry dwarf woman, which
Wait, I can. Where is it?
oh, you can switch. Yeah,
Yeah, there's the angry dwarf woman.
there you go.
It's so
Actual
tiny.
size.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's
Uh,
really fun.
and I like for example, this character is essentially just like a self-insert of myself with no filters and a more laid back, um, like not as emotional. So I just kind of say the first thing that comes to my mind because it's kind of refreshing because I'm always in a customer service style position that I've always been. I've always had to put that filter on. So it's nice to play a character that can just walk up to someone and say something just nuts. And then the rest of the party just facepalm like, oh no, 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 no. And they try to get in the way to stop me from talking. It's just refreshing. It's like, I could say something to a random character in the game and I'm not actually offending someone or starting uh, some sort of incident or losing my job or anything. It's just my character is just saying things and interacting with things and learning and being curious, and that's really fun for me. So
It's also very hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I think Scary and Android Rain hit a very similar spot there. Like
um,
just going the no filter for 3
yeah,
hours a week is very therapeutic.
definitely. As long as well, as long as the dice behave, sometimes that's a thing.
Yeah, my mod is still a 3.
Yeah. So it tends to happen, but that's also one of the things that I've mentioned um, before to you, Jay, and I think to some of you guys, where it also helps on a different area. So there's also the exploration, the therapeutic, but there's also the comfort of being able to do things, but having a system behind it. One of my players on the Saturday game is autistic, very numbers oriented, very needs to have things organized. So playing the game allows him to try things that he normally wouldn't because there is that back where this crazy thing he's trying, there's still math to it. He's still building towards that goal, whether or not he's succeeding. So he's exploring and doing things. And I know there's a lot of players that we play with are very similar that will sit there for hours building characters and coming up with like I want to do this and if this does this and if I run there. So it's a nice experience for them as well. So
Totally not my afternoon.
No, I would never. Oh no, I'm in this picture.
um, so another thing I wanted to kind of bring up too, there's of course the gaming hobby. Um, there's also, obviously libraries of books, there's also storytelling, there's also DMing, which is what me, Core, you mentioned you've DM'd, and
Yeah.
Zan, Melkor, you've also DM'd as well.
Hmm.
That's another aspect that's pretty interesting. Um, Mel, do you want to kind of go over what kind of got you into DMing and kind of got you started and why you enjoy it as much as you do? Go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So a great one of the it's definitely one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Being able to actually do this and find people in doing this, but it did come out of a situation that was kind of a rough one, right?
Mhm.
Lost, it came out of like loss, and in doing so, I called up a few friends. I had a rule book on my hands for the game for this game called Numenera, and I had read through it, fervently, and just loved the world so much and wanted to do something with it, but never had the opportunity to. Watch a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. And through that hardship that I went through, I was like, hey, I want to do this. I want to get my mind off of something. I want to take this time, and my friends being there to support me were like, hey, we don't know anything about it, but like you seem very, very like invested and interested, and we want to be here for you in your moment. So yeah, let's do this. And like I was able to go to a friend's house. We grabbed, we only had one set of dice, and we ended up having to share it. We like ran the whole thing in like their bedroom and stuff like that. But it was, and I, and not being a player, but being a DM and sharing this world for them, it kept my mind so preoccupied that it was just a hook, and it just reeled me completely in. Um, and seeing the shock and the awe and the joy that you can bring into other people, you can reel out of other people, and see different sides of people that you haven't necessarily seen was it was amazing to behold. And so that's really what got me into it. And from that point forward, I found a friend group that allowed me to do it online, and we ran a bunch of games. And from there's for like the next like 6 years is where we're at today with that. Tried a bunch of different types of systems. But yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. That's like it's good. And I know one of the things you've mentioned, Mel, was about for DMing itself too, and for just playing and creating characters is just consuming media. That's
Oh
something that
yeah.
you mentioned before. Do you care to kind of reiterate that or kind of go over that again?
Yeah. So I watched a video. I'm always constantly trying. The best thing you can do is constantly try to learn and never stop. The moment you stop is the moment you become stagnant, and you're not going to get any better than what you were, right? So, always looking at videos, how to be a better DM, how to get more engagement, how to build a better world, right? Not just looking at DMing, but also looking at literary storytelling, and like how do you make an engaging character, because you can use that engaging character for your own character, for NPCs and stuff like that. But the best video I ever came across was one of the best tools for a writer or for like a DM is consuming media ravenously, right? Um, and kind of pulling from every single source, read as much as you humanly can, watch as many things as you can, right? Things and all these things are there to inspire you and for you to, you know, to steal and to take and to warp these ideas into your own kind of like into your own means, and then apply them into your own setting, which then elevates it so much more because it's something that you're interested in. You've had to invest critical thinking skills into to kind of develop further.
Mhm.
um and yeah, and it's been a wealth of help. And yeah, and everything like comics, movies, TVs, magazines, books, especially books. Books are a great place. It got me back into reading.
Mhm.
I had read a little bit, every now and then, like every other person, maybe a book every few years. But then I became a DM, and I was like, no, I want to take this seriously. And I started, I have dyslexia, so I have a really hard time reading, very, very hard time reading. But I got an Audible subscription, and I started just downloading books and just listening to them as I was working on things, and just pulling inspiration. And I went from having like a book a year to going through a book a week or even more, which I had never done. And I now have like a library on my phone for of like 100 plus books easy.
Nice.
And I know that like libraries, to kind of reel it into like the setting for libraries, is libraries do offer a lot of those Audible services through their websites and through being at the physical location, and other systems and stuff like that. And and also like font, like having like dyslexia fonts that exist out there that make it easier for someone like myself to read. Um, that's also a thing that I found out that libraries, have access to, or at least the ones in my area, where they have books where the fonts changed for that specific type of need.
That's really interesting. I've heard of it. I've never really seen or like discussed the dyslexia fonts. Jay, do you know if anything about that? Have you ever heard about that?
I don't yet.
That's something we're going to be looking and asking to see if we have because that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
we are
mean, I
rolling out.
heard of it.
Awesome. Yeah, we're rolling out new computers, so I'm hoping that we can get in early enough to get that part of the base formatting.
That'd be yeah, because if we can have some adjustment on fonts too and size, because I
Yeah.
know one of the big things is we have people that maybe have difficulty seeing, so having like a way to zoom or a way to control or change some settings would be really nice. So um, one thing I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Mel said, Jay, for putting you back on the spot, our goblin guest, is the consumption of media. You've been working at a library for a while and other jobs as well. I'm not aging you, I promise. But can you kind of maybe go over what you've seen, how media consumption has changed, or how libraries have changed, and some of the things that you feel have been done well to adapt, and some of the things you think could be done better? Maybe something along those lines.
Sure. As far as aging me, I can handily do that if that's useful. I'm old. I've been in the trade for 30 years, and I've enjoyed almost every bit of it. It's interesting. My first role in libraries was really teaching people how to use basic technology, how to search online, how to do those things. And that's 30 years ago. You may all remember, or perhaps not, but it wasn't very sophisticated in terms of what you could get online conveniently. There's a lot of stuff out there you really had to dig. Um, in my career, I've moved to different divisions at the Rochester Public Library. I spent the majority of my time. So um, we've when I was working in the science and history division, I did an awful lot of research on just all kinds of science topics, housing, construction. But in terms of the media, I think we've gone from a world that was so print oriented, and now with the mention of audible.com as a for instance, that has hugely changed the way people consume. And not just the model that is not just I shouldn't say the media, the audible media, lowercase audible, um, but just in general, in fact, everything is so much more easily consumed on a personal device. It fundamentally changes the way when people look at the library, and that is part of the reason that I was so eager to pull Pedro in here and pay him to run high quality games that people couldn't get elsewhere. Not because people can't produce them, but doing this for free on the people's own time is consuming. And I know that we don't pay Pedro to do all the development because I know he's doing a lot of writing and storyboarding, if you will, off the clock. But um, turning the library's deficit in the sense that we have a lot of open space into space we can use for other things, like a 5-hour gaming session. I'm 100% on board with that. And as I said, I think there's a lot of other societal aspects that we can um, push the needle on. We don't have a whole lot of control here, but I think that the more we can push into the community with these gaming environments and pull other libraries into this and actually using this gaming I don't want to say gaming environment, but use gaming as a tool to get kids talking about story creation, about maybe how they can work in the digital world, additive manufacturing, doing 3D models using 3D printers, things of that sort. So I think I've strayed off the topic a little bit, but
Oh,
this is
go
where I
for it.
see it going for us in terms of us being a success. I don't see the world of print media being something that we're ever going to get back, and nor do I think we would wish to. I think there's so much more exciting stuff out there that we can do. Um, People will read, yes, they won't be reading books on paper, delightful as that is as a diversion, I don't do that anymore. I mean, I can't think of the last time I picked up a printed book, but I don't know. Does that come close to an approximate response?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, again, it's changed. Printed books will always be there because there's always that novelty of having that book and that feeling. And there's always, oh, my device ran out of battery. So it's always going to be a thing, but like in the mainstream, definitely has changed to how they consume media in a different way. So, absolutely, with the libraries changing and focusing on technology, that's kind of what we've tried to do here, to create a welcoming environment for people to kind of interact with that technology and using that space. Like you said, for gaming, um, like the partnership that I set up with a group called Rochester Works that comes every Monday and helps people find jobs. We have people that come in help people find apartments. So it's kind of once this space brings people in, people feel comfortable and safe. Then we're using that space to do all sorts of different things. So um, definitely games it's cool, but it's also a lead into other things that we're doing. Um,
I would also want to point out though that Pedro, our vision of the library community is somewhat, well, very significantly uh, shaped by the fact we work at a central library in a relatively poor area of the city where parking is problematic. So the people that come to us are riding public transport to get here.
Mhm.
So I think the social environment we operate in may be shifting our vision of what's possible in libraries in different ways than if we were in an affluent suburban community.
For sure.
Um, I don't know that doesn't mean that we're ahead of the curve
Right.
because I kind of think it actually does.
Definitely.
Because I think we're seeing more and more people with that want what they want now. They need it fast because that's how people get their services here. We do so much one-on-one. It's immediate, it's direct. And I kind of think that's where the culture more broadly is headed. And so rather than I think us being behind the curve in terms of our concept of library as space, library as meeting place, library as the focus point for an online community, that's kind of a stretch there. But I think as libraries sponsor activities like this kind of gaming, I mean, I don't know. Like, I know Pedro, you do, Rain, rather, you do a lot of gaming on your own. You host a number of games on your own, as
Yes.
I'm sure many of the folks on this table do. Um, but to expect someone to do that at work, yeah, that's most people couldn't keep up the pace that you are. I don't think.
No, that's yeah. I get a lot of support from yourself and whatnot. At the same time, we still take care of uh, the people that come here, so that's also a testament to the team and all that. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Um, I know you brought up miniatures, 3D printing. I'm gonna open it up to the rest of you guys. Um, so I know obviously one aspect is creating characters. Um, Another aspect is representing these characters in multiple ways. We have Artsy, who is an artist. Um,
I.
I will say I'm going to give Frax credit for being an artist for Facebook. Not Facebook. Why did I say Facebook?
I
Minecraft.
did make Facebook, yes. My name is actually Mark.
Zuckerberg. For creating Minecraft skins of our characters. Um, I'm not sure if some of you have played with like Warhammer or anything that creates miniatures. Because one of the things we were looking into is like 3D printers. I know I brought that up as a discussion previously that Jay had brought up, and you guys gave me some good feedback, which I sent to him, and we were looking into all that. Um, as far as representation of your characters through art, be it like miniatures through art. I remember, Core, you mentioned that your Angry Dwarf Woman started out as just an art experiment of just wanting to have a really cool character, and you built from that. Do you guys want to kind of elaborate on some of that, or maybe give some examples? We can start with Artsy. Like, I mean, you've created tons of characters, including the current one that's talking, which is mine. Um, so help me build this character.
I'm a lot of art moms. Just
So explain the
uh,
process and what you know.
wh- what, like how I make a character from start to finish?
Well, just in general, like maybe What is that?
Usually I have a stupid idea and then I build onto that. I usually just find some inspiration, something that inspires me, like a building or some nature or a race or anything, and I just start building and I make a lot of drafts. And I use Hero Forge first because it gives me an instant visual without me having to draw for 3 hours before I'm satisfied. And then I usually change everything on there because Hero Forge is still limited.
Mhm.
So, and then make it usually my own. Like Hero Forge is very limited with hairstyles or outfits, for example, or certain design aspects. And yeah, you just add those. Pinterest, DeviantArt, ArtStation, all of those like help me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then I just visualize it. I mean, I can't. I'm not good with words, so I can't write. I am very visually oriented, so I just do that, and I draw it because I can see it in my head, but I can't word it.
Nice. So Hero Forge is actually something I mentioned to you, Jay. Hey, Core, can you do me a favor? Do you
Yeah,
have?
on it, on it.
I was gonna say, there's so Jay, how familiar are you with Hero Forge? I might have brought it up, but I don't think I've talked about it.
We've talked about it a little bit, but I'm not intimately familiar with the vast majority of the tools in the community.
So
Let me.
it's essentially and Core will pull it up in a second, but it's essentially a tool that you can use that helps you piece together a miniature with they have like armor sets, they have hairstyles that you can put on, and it pieces together a miniature virtually. There you go.
Awesome.
You can
Yep.
see it right there. And you can change the hairstyle, you can change the weapons, you can color it, and essentially, it is a tool that's used to kind of get a good visualization of the
Let
character.
me get
And
that in the background.
yeah, sure. And if you with Hero Forge, you can actually download the STLs. You can actually download the 3D print files, and you can actually 3D print the miniatures. Um,
I've
and
I've done that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think would be really cool.
Yeah.
Because again,
Yeah.
what's brought a lot of people into um,
Yeah.
the hobby, as you guys have mentioned, was kind of creating a silly idea and or not even silly, or just having some sort of inspiration, and then just following up on that inspiration and just making a character. And I think it'd be really cool to offer like a workshop where we kind of go through like a Hero Forge or something with several of maybe like the teens or just the community or some of the people that are interested, either having it here or somewhere else, and then we can actually, as a part of when they finish it, print out the miniatures and have them have their own character, and that might get them into the hobby, and they might start to become connected. And we've all gone down that rabbit hole where we get like one piece of art of our character,
Oh
and
God.
then now we have like folders of our art of our character.
Yeah.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
So yeah, that is actually exactly the origin point of the Angry Dwarf Lady. Because at
Yeah.
that point I had a Ko-fi subscription to Artsy, and
Yay.
that was a YCH a month, and I had a lot of stuff of my existing characters, and then I had a discussion with some friends where we were like, yeah, dwarf characters became kind of rare, even if they're such a great archetype. And then I was again dwarf females even less so, and then I popped open Hero Forge and I wanted to play a barbarian, so I made a dwarf barbarian and basically took inspiration from every piece of dwarf media that I found, but kind of made her something unique then, I think, and that's how this Hero Forge became Skari Tuskbreaker, my dwarf barbarian. Yeah.
Yeah, a very scary dwarf barbarian that hits really, really hard with a what is it like a It's
Oh,
like a
it's a Dorndurger, a dwarven zapper thing that's basically a giant mall head on a chain. We nicknamed hers the Wrecking Mall.
yeah. So he's just whipping around a block of like stone on a chain.
Open the image bar.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'm actually already on it. I got that from another artist. Let me quickly grab the original.
So, but yeah, like I was mentioning, Jay, that it would be really cool to have, um, like, hey, we're gonna create characters, or I put a proposal last week for creating maps and working with the softwares that we offer for maps.
There we
Um,
are.
there we go. I'm sure you recognize that, Jay.
Oh yes,
She came in. She came in like a wrecking ball.
wrecking ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
um,
there's from the same artist I got that actually I love that moment in the game so much that I had the artist actually that I had a comic made for that. Remember that one? Where is it? That's the flats.
I believe her first course of action in the campaign when we first got into combat was to use the maul to break through the floor
Yeah,
and land
Yeah.
in front of all the enemies.
yeah,
And then yes, this is the part where you just kept getting hit and you just didn't go down. You just
yeah. Right, I can't actually scroll that far. We have to make it bigger.
yeah.
There's
So
a big done at the bottom of the image. There we go.
so we're not done.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, she took potentially lethal damage but survived because barbarian. And then she just became angrier.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
barbarian.
yeah, but I love
Right.
that so much that I had an artist
Yeah.
just do a piece for that. So yeah, and that's I mean the great thing about tabletop games, it has emergent storytelling, which is something super unique.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't really see that because if you're by yourself, you might have an idea, but when you're feeding off of someone, um, not only does it make you a bit more comfortable, but also sometimes breaks the whole writer's block thing, or because and again, it's emergent. So you roll a dice, you roll a 20, and you crit, and you take out a monster, and it's just like this moment where everybody's just cheering, like, yeah, that's great. And the opposite, you struggle, and it's like, oh, that's whatever, and then someone has to come and help you. There's always those tense moments. So.
I
Uh,
like the idea of emergent storytelling as well, because that does tend to highlight the notion that this is a collective tale. It's the authorship is, well, I guess we'll say collective again. And one of the things I really like the idea of is recording where some of the stories that Pedro's helped create, and they seem like they would actually make pretty good stories all on their own. Um, and I think because they're counterintuitive, some of the people have made decisions that, I know that Pedro has tried to walk people down a lane to take a particular course of action, and then they make a left turn somewhere and that creates a whole new dynamic they hadn't anticipated. And I think a story that was written off of that as a reader would similarly be in the experience would be one of an inventive story, a very counterintuitive decision making sometimes, I think.
Yeah, there's actually a few series out there that already did that. Like one that is particularly well known is The Expanse. It's a sci-fi book series, but it's
you,
based on the author's TTRPG game.
you've hit the funny bone, Jay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a series that I've just enormously enjoyed. And
Yeah,
when you look at and this is, inside poker, yeah, I don't know. But the differences in the way characters behave in the book and in the made for television series, I thought that was really interesting because it's almost as if this person chose this at this moment in the book, they follow the book path. But if they make a different choice in the screen version, then the path unfolds in a different way. And I thought that was just very interesting storytelling and a
yeah,
very unique way of approaching that. And that goes back from character stats too. I mean, some of the characters in the book start off very, very mild and unargumentative, and then they recast those or reshuffled those stats in a way for the movie character. I thought that was all just very interesting in terms from learning about storytelling. In a similar vein, I've consumed everything I can find by George R. R. Martin, which hardly surprise you, but I have yet to watch anything on screen because I just value that storytelling in the books so much. And again, those were to echo an earlier part of the conversation. Yeah, that was a lot of audible.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
the
that
shows were good for a couple seasons, and then
You're not
and
missing much with Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
and then
truly. From
as
what even the few vignettes I've pulled, I've enjoyed visually, but then I realized, wow, they're missing so much of the story here. That's
I mean the it that series has vanished from the face of pop culture, and that should really say something about the ending. Sadly,
Do you think that The Expanse has vanished
no,
similarly?
no, I was
I think
talking Game
not.
of Thrones.
Oh, yes, I quite agree. Yeah, I agree with 100% on that.
Yeah.
I think that's and it's not because of the storytelling. I think it's the transfer to the film media.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how? I mean, the notion that you were ever going to get anything from George R. R. Martin, sorry, something like Bitter Blooms or some of his shorter stories. Um, I think there's Night Flyer has been made into a movie as well, but um, yeah, it's scale. How do you do that? How do you possibly translate that?
I mean,
yeah,
there.
they started off well. I will say the first few seasons, like the first 4 seasons, were pretty good.
I'd even
And
say 5. Season 5 was good.
season 5 also introduced the Xena Warrior Princess, aka the Sand Snakes. But yes,
Yeah, aside from that arc.
uh, they did pretty well. But yeah, then you started to see the web start to fall apart because that's an important plot point. But they just didn't have enough time. And then the star power, people were like, "Oh, I want to see more Jon Snow. I want to see more of this," and it started to shift, and it was kind of hard to balance it. So you see kind of characters just disappear, um, basically.
Well,
Like,
the source material petered out after the introduction of the Sand Snakes, I
mhm,
believe.
Yeah, that was a big issue because I started to have to go off George Martin's notes, and there's a big difference between having an actual story and just having the cliff notes.
Well, and it'll see what happens when and if Whispering Winds ever comes out, just where those characters went. I think we late see them at Molt Kalen or something like that is the last we see of them in the
mhm.
produced works. So we'll see where this goes with it.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, well, I'm not going to spoil, but a certain character is not even alive yet. If they are alive, or not. So there's really interesting things, and there's some characters that in the show died a lot earlier than they did in the book, or not at all, or vice versa. So it was unique where they went with it. Um, it had potential. It had great actors. I think the actors did a fantastic job.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
It's just that unfortunately it started to turn into more of a TV show than an actual story,
I mean,
which you know
it's not the
happens.
first case of good actors working themselves to bone on a script that's just going nowhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I can imagine after filming for such an enormously long time that a lot of them were actually just tired of being those characters. I know that the actor that did Jon Snow has said that at times that at the end he was really just tired of acting Jon Snow, just
yeah.
because it's been at that point. I think how long did I film?
They had 8 seasons. They took a break. It was almost 10 years. I think it was 9, 10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
Uh,
imagine.
I
uh,
mean,
the actor's name, first name is Kit, I think.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Kit Harrison.
Yeah,
Kid
so he
Harington.
Yeah.
starts off that series as a young man, but then I think of people like, is it Maisie Williams who plays
Yeah,
the character of
Oh,
Arya?
yeah.
Yeah,
What that's her upbringing. Holy cow! You
Yeah.
kidding me?
yeah.
How do you're never normal after that. But I
No,
have watched some interviews with her, and she seems to have come to some favorable resolutions of the difference between living a life as an actress at from oh is she 13 maybe
I
when she
think it was.
starts that series?
Yeah, yeah.
she was
I think
very young.
Possibly.
Yes.
They
yeah.
were all
So
they were all appropriately aged, but because it takes so long to film, they aged pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Stranger Things, which is another show that that has D&D as a backdrop, where the actors kind of aged. They were like, oh, they're like, middle schoolers or high schoolers, whatever. Oh wow, now they look like adults now. Like what's going on? Not really adults. It's exaggeration, hyperbolic. But they aged.
Well, in their defense, if you've ever watched High School Musical, you know that high schoolers looking like adults is not a new concept.
I mean, just to think about that point, if I think about, as I said, I've had a 7-year Shadowrun campaign, and that the first like characters ended their careers like a year ago now.
Mhm.
And I just played a character for 6 years, and yeah, I was really excited to play a new one. So I feel with Kid on that, and that's the case of me actually playing the character in a gaming environment and not just from a script. So that's still more engaging, I think. And I sympathize with him after 6 years of that. So yeah, playing
Absolutely.
off a script for a decade sounds tiring.
So the one I'm super interested in how it's going to turn out to be um, is the One Piece live action, where they seem to plan to do almost as much as they can, but with so much material, like
Yeah,
and
that's
how long
going
it's
to be something.
filmed. Yeah, I mean, if it's like 1 or 2 years between every season, the actors are going to be a lot older.
There,
And-
yeah.
Go ahead, Mel.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you.
I think
Yeah.
with the like material in One Piece, you have to actually worry about them dying. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
that's so much material. I mean, we've
There's
had that sadly now in one of the Star Wars series. I mean, I think it was an accident, but the active for Balin's skull is
oh
not around
oh
for the next season of Ahsoka, so
yeah.
it should come out, which makes me
And
sad.
he was the in my opinion, he was the part of Ahsoka that I cared about the most, which
He
is kind of telling because I
he's
felt there were different issues
Yeah,
there, but
yeah, no, there
like
were, but yeah, he became one of
he
my
made it
favorite Star Wars characters,
easily.
honestly.
Easily.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Deeply interesting character. Another thing that I would like to tie into um is back into the Expanse real
yeah.
quick. And how the Expanse was written by two authors simultaneously, but reads as one voice. And I think that we're doing something very similar to that actually today. Rain.
Okay.
Uh, uh
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Our Lancer campaign.
yeah.
So just to kind of go over it real quick, mostly for Jay, but for those
Hmm.
who are not aware, Lancer is another TTRPG system. It's more futuristic. It's takes place after essentially the fall of Earth, and then Earth is then rebuilt, even better than before, and technology advanced to a point where frames or mechs are a thing. So it's a very interesting setting. The combat is mostly all um, like very like flashy mech combat and all sorts of really cool, interesting things. There's a lot of interesting story points that deal with like essentially the math god that was created, or essentially a AI just did enough math to make themselves real. But anyway, before we go off on a tangent, which we could, the campaign we started off as I'm just going to start running it. And Mel here was like, he's DM'd it before. And so we've kind of handed off. So he DM'd, I DM'd the beginning, he DM'd an arc that introduced a character and the whole story plot point. And then now it's been handed back off to me. And we're kind of building the story. And we also have a third DM that's kind of
Hmm.
ready to jump in if we need him. And it's like there's three of us that are creating a story, and it's I can see how the difficulties could come, but I also can the fact that we communicate so much about it. It's really that cooperative part. it hits different once you've played TTRPGs where you have like the cooperative storytelling, but you have time to think about it. Then it starts to become evil. Then we start like, if I do this, what if you do this? And we're like, yeah, we're gonna do that. And
And
it's
then it
just
becomes. Go on. Sorry.
go ahead, finish because I know you're
I
gonna
just
say
saying it becomes very diabolical very quickly for the players, but very, very interesting as a story overall.
yeah,
We'll be fine.
Yeah, totally.
yeah. So that's definitely a very fun system. I do want to introduce that to maybe a library group. We actually did play it a couple times, Jay, when we had like the days where a couple people are missing.
Oh
Um,
yes.
yeah, so I'll just like what, we're just gonna run something random, and we did Lancer, and they love it. So we've been doing that from time to time when not everybody can show up for Pathfinder. Um, so
And that's one of the, just really brief, that's one of the things I really appreciate about the way you've handled those groups is that you keep it moving, not just within the story arc, but also in terms of an educational component, the introduction of new systems, new games. And as we've talked about a little bit about the 3D printing, the
Mhm.
potentials with that, I think just integrating those things is a natural fit in a library that frankly has some assets that we can bring to the table that wouldn't necessarily be available to a lot of normal game players. I
Yeah.
think that we can help create an environment, not just at our library, but actually take the show on the road, so to speak, and do it at branch libraries that are part of our system, and pull in more
Yeah.
talent and help create a broader environment and talent pool. This is writing workshops. What we're talking about here in a
Yeah.
lot of cases, and I absolutely my take on emergent storytelling and the authors of the Expanse, how they manage that, and then the almost game playing aspect that that can have in the background of the consumer's experience. So you guys having a little, not exactly a feud, but throwing a few curves at each other, and that evidence makes itself clear in the game playing experience. I think that's a fascinating part of that.
Yeah,
It's almost like having too many gods in your pantheon that
Huh.
throw
So
lightning bolts at inconvenient times.
I
that's
I have
that's
a
kind of it.
I have a weird
But
story for that, because I thought it was a very interesting thing. Since we just were at Mechs and Emergent Storytelling, I've told you guys this story a couple of times, so sorry please, but Jay hasn't heard it. There was a studio that developed a game for another originally TTRPG, which is Mech Warrior, which is basically Lancer meets Game of Thrones.
Mm.
Um, it's basically also a distant future with a big war in between where a lot of technology was lost and some of the mech tech stayed around as we can fix them, but we can't build them, and basically noble houses formed around the people owning and operating mechs, and then you have basically a feud of noble houses that ravages the galaxy. That's basically the setting. And a game studio developed a computer game for that, but they to workshop their system and kind of find their story points a bit, they played a campaign with the old TTRPG rules basically, and they live streamed that, and the developers played, and they went, no, we're going permadeath. If a pilot dies in the game, the person's out. And they actually 3D printed the mechs and had the battle damage on them displayed because they just took the 3D printed mechs and took a soldering iron to it if it took damage from lasers, or screwed into it if it was hit by a cannon. And so and they fixed the mechs then by just putting little metal plates on the solder spots, so they actually looked like battle weary as the mechs would look in that scenario. So they basically did a very evocative version of emergent storytelling for that, and that all influenced the development of the game, which was a super cool thing to watch.
there's actually NPCs in the game that are directly connected to it.
Yeah,
Didn't you mention like one of the NPCs that tends to always die is one that died in the actual tabletop?
yeah, no,
Because
they sadly had a lead developer die to a bad roll in session 5 or so, which was really bad, but they went with it. And then they basically kept the person kinda in because the commander of the mech group basically felt very guilty for that happening and had his tech guys program an AI based on the pilot that died, so the person basically played that AI for the rest of the campaign. So yeah, and that's a completely emergent story branch that wouldn't have been there hadn't the dice decided that person is not anymore. So that was super interesting.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it coming to media influencing media, the BattleTech, the video game, the turn-based video game that came out, thinking like 2016, 2018,
17,
Yeah.
17. That also had a direct effect on top of all of that into the lore as well that you guys are telling me about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
they actually
is
made it canonized it,
yeah, that's the first non made by the publisher media that was canonized ever.
which is cool.
Yeah, Catalyst has the license on that, and their wiki has a whole section of they call it apocryphal media, I think. That's all the game stuff that's not canon. And they wrote a lore book for the noble house they were fighting for in that campaign, so they basically canonized that Twitch campaign. That's the first non first party media that was canonized. So it had a big
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And yeah,
So I
that
want to pull. Oh, go ahead.
they could only do that because they could play around with the mechs and had the time and the space to do that. So yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Opportunity.
So I want to go around the table and pose a question. Um, so as far as for like gaming or community building and some of the stuff we've talked about, um, in your local libraries or local places where you could play in person, you can even do game story, but in particular in libraries, um, what kind of programs would you like to see? What kind of things you think would be good ideas if you have anything? It doesn't have to be in depth or detail. We can always expand upon it. But like, what would you like to see? What you think would be a good idea? Um, I can start with whomever, and then we'll end with me and Jay kind of giving some feedback on that.
Actually, I'd like to go first if that'd be okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Mel.
I'd definitely like to see more things like your position being popping up and other and it just all across because again it draws people in, it draws people to a place and then they realize that they have assets that they never had access to. But the most important part of it there is paying for that person's time to create a quality thing to make people excited to come back, not just like, oh, this is fun, but wow, this person has put a lot of time, thought, and effort, and they're actually, and the reason why it's doing so well on top of that is because this person doesn't really have to work, that has the time available to them either at work or at home, but they're also getting paid for their time through it and being able to bring a even higher level form of play to this and dragging even more people in as what I like to see around in my library communities is seeing more librarians given the time and the ability and the support that you have to be able to do such projects, because I feel like that's also kind of lacking where it's just treated more as a repository for either getting some help on some technical issues or just a storage for information, and people coming in who are particularly interested in physical media come there to get a book or two, but there's so much more there that can be explored, which you guys are exploring currently.
Cool.
I'd like to weigh in on this real quick. I can tell you that that would be awesome, but from a library perspective, it's the more. It's this, okay, you're doing gaming, but what else are you doing? What has
Yeah.
sold that here is frankly, not going to push too hard on this, but Pedro's character. He's a quality individual. He cares about people. He's created an environment that works for people. It's not just a gaming environment, because if it
Yeah.
was just that, we wouldn't be able to support it. But because I've been able to go to administration and say, look, Pedro's making a difference in people's lives. He's creating an environment where people feel differently when they walk out, not just because they had an experience, not because they're exploring a part of themselves, but fundamentally their relationship to themselves, to their different aspects of themselves. Different people in those groups interact in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. Being able to convey that and find someone that can do that in the storytelling environment, there is the challenge, I think. And I think that just as a gaming experience exclusively, the way I played it in college would have been okay. but Pedro's able to bring more to the table. And I think that one of the things that he and I have talked over and over and over about is the requirement, if you will, for a library to support this, you have to bring more to the table than quality storytelling. And
Exactly.
as we create environments that are inclusive and promoting growth, I think, and there aren't great verbs that I'm aware of because I'm a dumb guy, but the more we can push into that, the personal space and create opportunities for development, growth, that's how we get this into the community.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's a game, but we know it was well played to some degree. When I was in college, I was at a fancy pants school. When I played a ranger because when I was not at school, I was home. Give me a gallon of gas and a chainsaw. I'm off in the woods for a couple days and loving my life. That was not the life I had at school. So I got to bring some of that into my character as a ranger when I played. Uh, but I think that if it was just entertainment, would be one thing, but being able to sell it as more than entertainment to an administration, creating those narratives for the consumption of your administration is the chief challenge. We've been able to do that because Pedro came out of the box ready to roll and make the kind of programming we needed to be to sell it to our administration. I don't mean to harp on that, but that is the live or die by principle is are you doing more than a story?
Yeah.
In a way, we have I shouldn't make fun. I won't. I will retract the agenda I was about to launch on. But if you're not producing a program that makes a difference, you're providing entertainment. It's hard to support someone who's just providing entertainment in storytelling. But doing more than that and in areas that are critically needed in an urban community where people face a lot of prejudice, a lot of challenges, and frankly, modern living in America is corrosive on one's soul. And I think the more we can do to provide environments that ameliorate some of that pain and some of those challenges, and then we help them with their taxes too when they get here.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's all great.
And I think that using him and what he's done here as a great template to build off of for other libraries is amazing.
Well, one of the goals that I have for Pedro is beyond just his personal success and satisfaction in what he's doing. Is I really want to get him and one of our colleagues here, Sai, who also is into gaming. Well, I got a whole team here. What's interesting is I've pulled all these people together, and it seems like a common thread is they all like gaming, which is not surprising in a technology-related
It makes
environment.
sense.
But what I've been hoping to do is get Pedro and Sai together to write articles in some of the library journals, if not, in fact, Library Journal, which was the leading journal in the field in America, at least, and help push this idea out as how one can create these spaces, how one can sell this to administrations. A lot of libraries have the luxury of just saying, hey, we're just do whatever. When you're in a tight budget, you really got to do a lot of justification
Yeah.
linking a job like Pedro's with an adult technology center isn't that successful, I suspect, in the long term, which is why I'm kind of getting a number of members of my team to work in the teen center when they can. And as mentioned, Pedro's putting together a program for kids learning how to do map making, and the whole 3D printing program really isn't intended toward adults and intended toward kids. So I think that's an area that could be quite successful. This also pushes people out of the older generation, such as myself, being a relatively fossilized individual. I think people that are younger have more fresh experiences who live in technology and are literate in things like Warhammer and like that. They know the plot lines and can navigate these uh, tropes successfully. I think there's a lot of room for growth there in the field. And I think that if we can do that, we not only make successful careers and create great stories that people participate in, we can actually create a healthier culture.
Yeah.
There endeth the lesson.
Nice. This is wise advice by the
Mm.
wise, older, seasoned library.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rijpend.
wait, I got something for that.
Oh,
Let me be stupid.
If it's a soundboard, I turned it off.
No.
No.
I
You got
have the later variant of core.
Oh, you got the white here. Okay.
Yep.
I see. Let's see. I will raise you there.
Oh yeah. No.
Yes,
Yeah. We
we have our
have that.
puppets.
Nice.
Yeah. If you remember the
Yep.
nice Italian lady that guested on the big like event.
The
Come
conference.
on, Rex.
Yeah.
I'm turning it on here.
She Yosa's arm.
This version, right?
Help.
It's
Oh
off
no.
center. I can feel that. There we go.
There we go. We're all
Yeah,
puppets now.
so we definitely have uh connections to talented people.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's kind of been part of the reason why I feel like I've felt so successful recently with a lot of the things I'm doing here is because I have talented, wonderful people that back me up. So
I know. Also us.
Yeah, I was about to say thanks for dragging me along.
Oh no, I'll take the credit. What the hell?
No, you're allowed to. What the fuck?
so that's the one F word for the day. Thank you.
Yeah, that was mine. That it was never in question. Come on.
No, with it's fine. So the fantastic like idea there, Mel. Does anyone else would like to volunteer for like ideas too? Um, things they would like to see, um, where they would, some suggestions or just maybe even something that you've seen. I mean, like the whole pop-up library thing is fantastic. We've had that picture there.
Honestly, I would just want my local library to discover that there's other things than books. They got a really small selection of like games and videos, but those are kind of stuck in the 2010s. And they do events, they're fun events. I give them that, but they don't really seem to modernize as much as you seem to do. They don't
Yeah,
really have a technology
agreed.
center to speak of. They got some old computers that they use to help people with, and that's about it. So yeah, just anything beyond normal library would be welcome at this point. That being
Yeah,
said, they're still providing a very valuable service just by being a library.
Yeah, definitely.
honestly, to your credit, same here for my local library. The advice would be catch up to Reigns.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, the pop-up library was in Munich, so that was a pretty big library that did that. So yeah,
It's also a different environment, as Jay
yeah,
mentioned earlier, because we live in a fairly decently sized city, not compared to the rest of the state, because obviously New York exists, but a fairly large city. But we're also located in a central area, where parking is bad. So we get people that come here on the bus or walk. Um, and it's a lower income area, so we have a different environment. So people come in here looking for like, hey, I need apartments, or hey, I need a job, Whereas in a suburb, or in a larger city, like for example, like Munich, I'm sure it's a larger city and there's more open space. And, some people could just go to a library just to go to a library.
Hmm.
So there's that sense, like Jay mentioned earlier, that we're ahead of the curve because we have to be, because the demand is so, like, I mean, a couple months ago there was like this lottery for housing or something, and they just like, it was like the day before they're like, oh, by the way, you're doing this, all right, bye. And so
Oh,
a
okay.
bunch of people just showed up at the library needing help going through this, and that was interesting. um and I'm sure, Jay, you'll love to be reminded of how when COVID hit and we reopened, and everybody was trying to get um, their money for COVID,
All
and then
right.
we're cleaning, to make sure everything is clean so no one gets sick. Doing that and running through it's like called IDB, which we still do sometimes, and trying to get people identified. And it was like, whoa. So we kind of had to like learn fast because we kind of were thrown out there in the with the wolves.
I think for us, we've had no choice right down the line but to innovate and to create new models of service and define new definitions of success. Frankly,
Hmm.
our definition of success here, as far as we know, none of the staff got sick from being at work. I'll take that one. That's a good one. Um,
That's definitely an achievement.
You're very much ahead of the curve on that as well.
Yeah. Well, but as Pedro highlighted there, with the cost of creating an environment was significant. There's a lot of staff time just in cleaning, just in developing protocols. And frankly, I don't want to say what I was about to say. Sometimes you have the right staff, sometimes you don't. I'm lucky to have the right staff.
Yeah, and there's also I feel like from what I've seen from libraries, and at least in America, is that there has been a huge, larger drive, almost out of what seems like necessity for the library's like health or survival, in the United States, to have to innovate instead of having a wholly supportive government that really wants to take care of libraries like you might find in Europe and stuff like that, where here you kind of have to define your parameters and then be successful at them. Otherwise, funding can start slipping from what it seems.
Yeah, I have no idea how we would prosper if we were in an area that was more rural with less of a social consciousness built into the idea of why we fund libraries in the first place, as opposed to
Hmm.
more of a local history sort of emphasis that you find in a lot of smaller rural libraries.
Mhm.
Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that, but that's not what I'm in it for.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think people benefit from this of evolution though, um, a lot definitely from what I've heard from Rain and what I've
Yeah,
heard today as well.
yeah,
I think this is the path that we're on for the future. Ultimately,
Hmm.
I think if these places are going to survive, they have to do the bigger and better. One of the things I mentioned to Pedro a number of times is that, yeah, we can do gaming, but we got to do more. We got to find a way to link this with education, with technology.
Yeah.
And he's been very responsive to that and recognizes that. And I think as a model going forward, I think libraries are going to be harder up against it rather than less because the more uh, personal devices become even more capable small computers in the hands. And as the population ages and folks that are of my generation time out that have less facility with these things, there's less need to be teaching folks of my generation. So it'll be an interesting thing to see how this whole field shifts and what the
mhm,
use of the library is considered when that's considered a good place to be funding.
I
yeah,
have a
I think.
question.
yeah.
Oh,
Go for it.
Do you guys in your library rent out like games, like tabletop games or board games?
I don't think we do. We have a fairly modern teen center or the center where they have a lot of like video games, but I don't know if they do tabletop or if we even
Because
have like
we have these places where it's mostly for like the poor people, because the games cost a lot of money. Same with puzzles or jigsaw puzzles. Um, and you can basically rent it out for like a week or something, play it, and then you just return it. Of course, there's like a little bit of a fee in case of damaging. Um, but they call it a player take here.
We do have a toy library in one of the branch libraries in one of the poorest areas of the city, and that's very popular. I know they do a lot of
mhm,
toys for kids up to 10, maybe, uh, but board games, I don't know that they do. That'd be an
Because
interesting thing.
that's an interesting.
our local game store does that too. You can just rent it so you can test out if you like the game or not, and just play it.
there's a really big tent at a festival I go to that does something like that. It's called the board game tent, obviously, where they basically stock in as many weird niche board games they can find, and this enormous tent is like a tiny shop corner where they all got those. And the rest of it is tables. You can just take whatever you want. You can play it. You can test it, and then you can buy it if you want. It could. It does remind me of what you're describing.
Mhm.
So, except you can't take it home because you're at a festival. But like it's there. You can try it.
I mean, yeah, you can. There's like multiple options, like social services basically does it that you can actually take it home, but then the local game store is like, yeah, you can play it here with us, have a drink or something, just play, invite, and rent a table basically, or reserve a table basically, because the table is just free.
I
Well,
mean,
that's a real interesting programming idea. We could do I don't know that we'd be able to build it into a routine weekly thing, but I would imagine that we could probably reach out to some of the game sellers and
Some of the stores that
try
are
to do a big game day.
Yeah, that could
so
absolutely work. And I think those can get very popular because often those niche board games are really fun, but people don't know them because that's
Yeah.
just not they're not popular, and they need to start somewhere. This could be
Yeah.
this could be a big thing for both parties, really.
Yeah, and I mean, jumping off of that, like, a lot of board game companies are actually really like the more indie ones where you have to buy directly from their website and stuff like that. Reaching out to them, they're usually pretty receptive to situations like this because it just, again, like Frag said, gets it more out there, and they're usually willing to donate. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Especially to a public library. I can imagine a lot of them
Yeah.
Mhm.
donates.
Corey, you look like you were going to say something.
yeah, the thing is with here in Germany, it's a bit different because we had a big problem getting like actual game stores off the ground here. I know the one guy who has one in my town, and he basically he worked like retail, like grocery stores, and he made a degree or he was a trainee in that, and he was like, yeah, I mean, this is logistics and retail. I'm just gonna open a game store, and that's the only game store the town where I come from with like 50,000 people has. But the thing is, our libraries actually, yeah, do lend out board games, so that's maybe they're covering a need that wasn't covered by stores because in Europe, game stores, if you're not in a big town, are few and far in between actually. So that's maybe
Yeah.
where that comes from. Like
Yeah,
actually
Yeah, we
finding,
just got our first one like 3 years ago.
yeah, you have the one. That's the thing. In my city,
Yeah, one.
it basically is you have two colleges and like 4 or 5 elementary and some good couple secondary schools, and he rented out a small storefront that's close to all of them, and that's why he or how he keeps afloat. So that's actually pretty difficult to do here still. So yeah,
and
there's definitely maybe a market for that. I mean,
and it's
yeah,
interesting.
as Mel said, if you go to like smaller companies and say, hey, can you send us some like demo prints so we can show them off at a game day or something? I think there's potential there, yeah.
I know because of the nature of our city, we have the Rochester Institute of Technology, U of R. So we have a lot of college kids. We do have a pretty sizable gaming community in Rochester, which is really nice. We have several stores, like at least I could count at least a dozen, from really small um, uh, shops where it's essentially a guy who is a blacksmith who does like actually smith his own armor and whatnot,
That
and
is
then
awesome.
decided to open up a store above his armory. So it's actually called his armory, Paul's Armory. Um, and then there's also like Millennium Games is a store. There's different places where that is essentially about the size of like a supermarket, and it's just a large venue that just has just board games and then has tables upon tables in another section where they host events. Um, and then you also
Yeah.
have like some of the smaller, um, more kind of uh, like pop-up shops that have some stuff there as well. So I mean that's interesting, and that's something that I've tapped into for ideas. I haven't brought them in, mostly because, um, again, being a library, bringing in a store is there's always that red tape because stores want to sell things and they want to promote and buy this and this and this and it's kind of different from what we're looking for at the library.
That's not a
But
public good thing.
yeah, but I mean, I'm sure with now that we've established and we have some some ideas, I'm sure maybe we can kind of touch base and see if there'd be more people willing to do so, especially if we're going to be more like kind of pushing to create more programs and more ideas or going out in the public. Maybe them bringing their stuff here might not be a thing, but maybe we bring something there or one of the conventions that are in the city or something. So it's
You
pretty.
know, getting back into the Hero Force thing, which is very easy to do. Because if my kids are bored, I just tell them like, "Hey, create me a character in Hero Forge." But I also wanted to add, they're gonna add kid bashing as of next month, which is
Ooh,
in 2 days.
which is
Which makes designing Hero Forge even better.
For those who don't know, kit bashing is being able to pull things apart and build it together like Legos that are not generally like that, which is cool.
It's what the other Lancer DM does, Kel.
Yeah.
He does for Retrograde.
oh yeah, like cutting parts of
Mhm.
existing
Mhm.
well, in this case, pixel art and then gluing it together.
Yep,
Yep.
Yeah.
that's cool. Um,
I've no idea how that would work in a 3D modeling thingy, but they'll figure it out.
I think they're just probably gonna make more options or break things up. It might be interesting. We'll see.
It's pretty easy. You can make up to 20 kid bashings and then you can add all of those. Like if I would make Nalaya, for example,
Mhm.
her hairstyle is not in there, but if I use the scorpion tail, for example, I can technically make a scorpion tail with rings around it and then save that as a kid bashing and then import that one as a hairstyle on top of the rest of my outfit.
Huh.
It's I mean, I saw some YouTube videos about someone who was trying them. It was cool.
Yeah.
Looks awesome.
It's very much I have to see this in person to really understand the thing for me. But it sounds awesome.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, what did I miss?
Did you leave?
No, I had to. I
You
had
didn't miss anything.
it's a coworker asked me a question to give me a heads up on something, so I was just
You
double.
didn't. You didn't miss anything.
I saw a second goblin show up.
Yeah, that was me finagling.
Sorry, I'm late.
All good.
Hey,
There you go.
Oh
There's a
god, I'm giant.
Solzy.
giant woman. So Jay, Solzy was the one I mentioned earlier. That
Mhm.
gave the presentation during the conference.
Ah,
Oh yeah, yeah. It was that person. So Solzy, this is my immediate superior and guild master, the goblin known as Jay.
Hello, it's
So
wonderful to meet you.
so it's a pleasure, Solzy.
Solzy is one of my players and good friends, um,
Iris.
writers. She's actually one of the writers for the ATH podcast and kind of puts the schedule together in a way that makes sense. That helps me out. I'm not sure if it um, if I could be as organized without it because I'm kind of scatterbrained, so it kind of helps me out have an idea. It also helps kind of organize some of the articles, as well as help me with Monday writing. And unfortunately, I tend to we were talking about adversity and how emergent storytelling sometimes happens through failing and having struggles. Uh, unfortunately, I
Rain tortures my character.
I, I use her as a kind of an anchor for a lot of story points because of how well she interacts and engages with the story, and it brings everybody else along. So which is really nice. So we just kind of were just doing a quick, I would say, uh, going through everyone's suggestions for like what can a library do for helping with gaming, inclusivity, creativity, what kind of program ideas. Essentially, I'm trying to steal some of your ideas so that I can use them and take credit for it. Sorry, did I say that right?
I mean, we talked about the creative writing process. That's just par for the course.
But realistically, it's kind of to bring light of some of the things that um, people are interested in. And so, if say someone's watching the recording, the VOD, because we're doing this, we're recording this, and they are working at a library, and they see it, and they're like, "Oh, people are interested in that. Maybe I could start this program." Or, "Hey, this is successful. Maybe I can start doing that." Just to kind of get the wheels turning. So, I know we kind of uh, you kind of just showed up, but did you have anything to add, or you want to talk about your experience with the community, or um, maybe I know you've worked with kids, or
Yeah. I haven't. I've only ever experienced like my own library in passing, my own city library. It's pretty good, and as as far as I'm aware, it hosts things like whenever the city hosts wants to have its own Comic Con, the library will host it.
we need to do that, Jay.
We're working on it.
But on top of that, I'm not sure if it does what Rain likes to do on Saturdays by like hosting a place for people to come in to play tabletop RPGs. But I think if this hasn't already been said, but I think that's like a big thing. It Tabletop RPGs are a really massive way to bring people together and engage creative thinking. And I know when I was a teacher assistant, I wanted to I wanted to try like at the beginning of the year, before I got to know my kids and what like what kind of attention they needed. I wanted to try to use tabletops to engage them in that way, but schools schools don't often work on things you'd hope to do, and once the year got started, we figured out that a lot of the kids were behind and needed a lot of work, and so that idea fell to the wayside. But I know like a lot of like high school teachers use tabletops as a way to engage their students, and I honestly think it has a place in education. Like it can promote creative thinking. There's a bunch of math in it, and so if you're at an early level and you want to do very basic problems, uh, you can use it to teach math and things like probability and stuff like that.
There's a lot of tactical and strategical thinking as well involved in many of them. Like to think out a game plan, to keep to it, to know when to diverge from your plan, to adapt it. There's a lot of things you can learn from games. That's kind
Yeah,
of the evolutionary point of them as well. So
I
Yeah.
remember when I was first tossing around that idea with that idea of my teachers. I told I told her that it's like, oh, like if I wanted to if I wanted to help teach the kids like how to write a letter, I set up a scenario like, oh, the goblin princess needs help writing a letter to send to her parents, or like send out to invite people to her birthday and stuff like that. How can you help like the goblin princess do that? And And it's just so much at your disposal when it comes to the creative thinking, when it comes to the mathematics and the strategic and tactical side. I am a big advocate that the use of tabletops could work its way into the curriculum, especially since, like, I also taught high school for about half a year, like, especially since, like, a lot of kids yearn for ways to, like, express themselves or think creatively that way.
Yeah, absolutely. When we had the conference here, we had that one teacher who does do um tabletop with his students, and he did give a little bit of a talk and a presentation. So it'd be really nice to kind of see more of that, or see more creative options, because there's people learn different ways. Some people learn by you hand them a stack of books and read this and take the test on Friday. And some people are like, well, they just need to hear it once and they can take the test and they get an A. And others need to kind of go into groups and discuss it and kind of analyze and think it through. And that's where it sticks with them. And I think tabletop does a little bit of like all of that. Because here's the books, learn all the rules. By the way, you're going to be working with people and coming up with solutions. And also, here's the map and here's what happened and here's the story. And so it's really interesting. So, but absolutely. So using it as a resource, kind of tied in with the teen center, because we do have a teen center, and using it to teach and have that option as well is pretty cool. Partnering up with maybe even schools or something. Who knows? And to kind of piggyback off of what Artsy mentioned is, maybe having those books available to be rented out for events or for something, having a subscription to whatever service that offers them, the tools needed, or, you know, having like, hey, here's a Foundry account that you can use and you can rent it out, or here's a server that the library hosts and we're paying for so that you can run your games on. Things of that sort. So
That that would be amazing. And, like, when it comes to like the things that like the things that tabletops can do, I remember I should look up the name of this YouTuber again, but I stumbled across a YouTuber. He's a black YouTuber who grew up in Detroit, and he was a gangbanger. And
mm,
he told a story that I'd like to think that is true, that uh he used, like, very homebrewed D&D to connect people from opposing gangs, because he had moved into a place where there was a there that was ran by an enemy gang, and he didn't want his mom to get hurt, and so he used D&D to bring them together. And after over the course of several years, he says all the people that he was DMing for ended up quitting their gang and moving on with their lives.
that's cool.
Hostilities do turn sort of trivial when you actually meet the people and discover that you don't actually have that many differences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reminds me of that one, and I brought it up multiple times. The one African American gentleman did that would actually try to befriend white supremacists and
Oh,
became
yeah.
friends with them and actually turned them, and where they turned in all of their stuff and they've turned a new leaf. In fact, I believe he had a collection of like KKK memorabilia, like the ones that people handed into him, because he's like, they've given it up and they've become friends because they've seen that we're just the same. So that mindset is amazing. So yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it happening. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
I mean,
believe
there
it
was a
Like,
happening.
similar situation during World War One with the Christmas truce. They held a truce on Christmas, so soldiers from the opposing trenches actually came together, celebrated Christmas. And the day afterwards, the war effort didn't really go too well because they didn't really want to shoot each other anymore. So the years afterwards, this was forbidden by the officers, which is horrible.
Mm.
But yeah,
Okay, guys,
Just
I
a
need
weird.
to leave because I need to set up for stream in a few minutes. So
Yeah, it might
Yeah,
actually
same.
be a good time because Jay, I'm not sure about our time, but I think I have to be out there in 3 minutes. So
I think I do too. Yeah.
yeah, so if we do want to wrap up real quick is to thank all you guys for being here. Jay, thank you for taking the time out to actually sit down with all my basically I call them friends, but they're more like family at this point.
yeah.
So the people that the people
Aw,
I
thank
spend a lot of
you.
time with. So and kind of see that, I'm not just talking to myself and being crazy when I'm when I'm at my desk sometimes. Sometimes that there are live people behind each face and they bring a lot of creativity to the table and again, a lot of the successes and a lot of the things that has made our programs here successful in the library. I know you've said, oh, it's because of what I've done, but a lot of it is just bouncing off of all of these people, every single one of them, getting ideas from them and talking to them, or when I'm down or I'm struggling, just venting and saying, hey, what can I do? And then they give me an idea, and that inspires me. So that's just
then I give you an idea, and you think I'm gonna do the opposite of that. Then you have a great idea.
exactly.
He takes my
Or I
ideas
say
and
something in
tortures
Gen
me with
Alpha
them.
speak, and you're like, "What?" And it confuses you so greatly that you get an idea.
Yeah. Or taking Soulsy's idea and just
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, really just
Solzy
torturing
actually
me
has
with it.
ideas.
I'm sorry, Soulsy. I don't mean to, but it's good storytelling sometimes.
Art is
It is good
derivative.
storytelling.
Steel.
Hey, I did not cut off Soulsy's wing and smell.
I didn't cut it off either.
Well, it's true. She kind
Dorn
of.
did.
Oh yeah, that's right. Dorn did because
Yeah.
the disease. Okay, so yeah, see, creative storytelling.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Also, I'm never at fault for these type of things.
Also, I have one more thing that kind of has perpetrated alongside your family of weird TTRPG people and your setting and your groups. A lot of orcs now believe that orcs hatch from eggs.
Yeah,
Oh my
well,
god. Okay.
yeah,
There
Oh
was-
yes,
orcs hatch from
yes.
eggs.
There was another.
Maria does too now.
Yeah,
There was a
she rolled a
Oh, yeah.
recall knowledge and it was a 1.